Some good photos of us in school, were they? Aye. Very good. Did you see that on the horse and cart with the milk trains on the back? Did you see that? Horse and cart with milk trains. Somebody said, hell, I didn't know you were doing that, didn't they? You cheeky buggers, I said. Front race. Sorry.
Good afternoon and welcome. Firstly, I would like to extend my thanks to Minister Guto Llywelyn for welcoming us into his home from home, which we will be learning more about shortly. We will be recording the whole event. Be assured that the camera will only screen the presenters and there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions at the end of the address. I would briefly like to explain why this gathering has been organised. I started a page on Facebook back in 2011, and over time people have joined and contributed. We now have over 1,500 members. Most are local, however, we have members from all over the world that have connections to Whitland. Last year, we had a small unofficial gathering at the Tar Hotel and spoke about Whitland's connections with the White House. Following that meeting, I shared some of the information to Facebook and the Facebook group Whitland People and Its History. There were many inquiries as to whether the meetings would become a regular occurrence. There seemed to be enthusiasm from members to hold another get-together, which brings us here today. Guto kindly offered to hold this first official going down in history here at Tabernacle and invited Dr. Denny Owen as the guest speaker. I would now like to welcome our speaker this afternoon, Dr. Denny Owen. Denny was brought up not far from here in the village of Cefn Pant. He was educated at Penygair School, Primary School, Whitland Grammar School and Swansea University. He first worked for many years for the Atomic Energy Authority. He then changed from the world of science to the world of education when he was appointed to teaching post at Llandovery College. Denley has a great interest in local history and is the author of 6 books, Denley? Yeah? 6? 5. The first was on Powell Maesgwyn from Llanboidy, which was published in 2012. Then came Taf Valley Lives. This was followed by a book on Llanboidy and then a book on Griffith Harvard, who lived in these parts in the 19th century. And then finally, a book of the history of this chapel, Tabernacle, which was published in 2019. Last year, Denley was given a special award by Carmarthenshire County Council for his work in local history. We also welcome Denley's wife, Lon Owen, who is here today. They both live in Llandovery, and as it happens, the National Eisteddfod next week is being held in a field right behind their house. We welcome both, and we look forward to Denley's address this afternoon. Could I ask Denley, would you kindly...
Guto said it was to be a chat and a cup of tea. When you sent me an email to say that I'd be speaking from the pulpit, it would be a similar than answer setting. But it's a chat. Well, I'm going to be sure, ladies and gentlemen, invitation, and thanks for the introduction. I want to give you that's better. My view on the history of Tabernacle. And for the people of Wales, the chapels are historically enormously important because they had a huge influence on our development as a people during the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century. The first chapel that I remember is Cefn-y-Pan Chapel near St Lidwyn. That is where I attended Sunday school and other services and Cymynfarth Canu back in the 40s and early 50s. And you know, apart from the day school, I think most happenings in our lives then are something to do with the chapel. There'd be Sunday school, of course, concerts, penny readings, Sunday school, and the Sunday school trip. Now every year there'd be a meeting called to discuss whether we would have a trip, and if we did want a trip, where would we go? We all knew the answer, Tenby. But it happened every year that we had to discuss the whole matter. The first minister I remember was a Mr. Price, always dressed in black and seemed a bit of a dour character, although he was rumoured to be a follower of Swansea Town Football Club. Maybe that's why he was a bit dour. His successor at Cefn-y-Pan was certainly a practising sportsman. Mr. Edgar Phillips, straight out from college, spent a lot of time fishing and shooting rabbits, time which he might have spent visiting his members. And a prominent member of Cefn-y-Pan, Mrs. Jones, was very upset. She missed three Sundays because of illness, and Mr. Phillips hadn't been to see her. Eventually he turned up, and she was ready for him. She laid into him. Mr. For shame, Mr. Phillips, being taking so long before coming to see me. If I was a rabbit, he'd have been here long ago. And Mr. Phillips had an answer. I see it was that if you were a rabbit, I'd have shot you long ago. Now, to me, a chapel is about people more than about the building. It's about how chapel members and minister behaved and interacted with the general community. Right, so let's start back in 1689. That was the year that Parliament passed the Religious Toleration Act. This act allowed non-conformists, in other words, those that refused to conform to the Church of England's rules of worship, it allowed them to meet and to build their own meeting places. And thus was the chapels born. 150 years of religious turmoil was ended. The first chapel built in this area was Henllan, which is about 5 miles north of here, in 1697, followed by Glandwr in 1712, Dedication in 1738, Rhydd y Parc, 1787, and my wife was born and brought up at Rhydd y Parc Farm, and this chapel was built on their land and also called Rhydd y Parc. Carvan, 1797, and Trinity Llanboidy, 1800. Now after Trinity Llanboidy, chapel building really took off. And from 1800 to 1850, a new chapel was opened on average every 8 days. For 50 years that went on. And by 1851 census, there were over 2,800 chapels in Wales. And Professor John Davies, the late Professor John Davies, historian, a book, of course, on the history of Wales. He reckons that perhaps this chapel building boom of the first half of the 19th century was the most striking happening in the history of our country. And in the 1940s, a poet, T. Rowland Hughes, described the chapels and their influence like this. Now he wrote in Welsh. I'll read you the last verse in Welsh, and then there's an English translation available as well. Nid ydynt hardd fy ffrind I chwi, ein hen addordau mawr di fi, ond hwy a'n gwnaeth, o'r blychau hyn y daeth, enaint ein doi a'n hechdoi ni, os chlwm ei llun, os trwsgwl ei trefn, cael Salem Sion so ar y Bethlehem. And in English it might sound something like this. They are not beautiful to you, my friend, our large, innumerable places of prayer, but they formed us. Out of these boxes came the perfume of our yesterdays, if bare in form, if clumsy their looks, Jerusalem, Zion, Zoar, and Bethlehem. And biblical names given to the chapels were found all over the length and breadth of the country. Jerusalem, Zion, Zoar, Bethlehem, Nazareth, Calvaria, Hebron, Nebo, Morea, Kaisalem, Bethel, Salem, Smyrna, Bethania, Ramoth, Capel Groes, and of course Tabernacle. It's been said that the Welsh knew more about the geography of the Holy Land than about their own country. Now, that poem by T. Rowland Hughes, a very powerful statement there. They formed us, as T. Rowland Hughes. So let's consider what happened in the Whitland area 200 or so years ago. The first chapel in Whitland was Soar, built in 1842. So it was part of the chapel building boom of the first half of the 19th century. Soar had seating for 53 and standing room for 300. Very quickly the chapels developed into community centres where all sorts of events were held throughout the week. Soar Far classes, Band of Hope, Bible studies, temperance movement, choir practice, youth or young people's clubs, lectures, and so on. Soar soon became too small. The 60 or so membership in 1855 increased to about 200 by 1874, so it had trebled in 20 years, yes. But it was also considered to be too far from the village centre because by that time Whitland was developing around the railway station, about a mile from Soar. Didn't seem very far, but there we are. The Soar congregation decided to build a new chapel and tabernacle, opened in 1874 with room for 600 seated. 20 years later, the membership had doubled to 400. And then 10 years later, in 1905, the membership reached 460. And that's the highest ever recorded for tabernacle. That was in 1905, so it probably has something to do with the fact that there was a religious revival throughout Wales, 04 or 05. As a matter of interest, it cost £1,600, which is about 170,000 today, but that today refers to 2019. With all the inflation about it, probably nearly 200,000 today. Clearing the debt was celebrated in a service on Christmas Day, 1876. And so it continued to be used for special occasions until 2001, when it was demolished for safety reasons. Tabernacle's first minister, William Thomas, established a cultural society here in 1888. And it might be interesting to note what was put on the first night, the opening meeting. It started with a lecture by William Thomas himself, entitled Legality of Amusement and Superior Pleasure. Sounds interesting, isn't it? But that wasn't all. This was followed by another 3 lectures. First, the influence of music, how to become rich, and honesty. Interesting, how to become rich, followed by honesty, eh? Something on there. There we are. But it hasn't finished yet. All that was followed by another 2 addresses, 6 solos, and about 9 recitations. A wonderful meeting according to the newspaper reports, proceeds to be shared among the poor. Well, of course, there was no radio or television in those days, so it seems they packed as much in as possible when they met together. There were so many events taking place in Tabernacle that the business people of Whitland took the decision to close their shops and businesses an hour early, 8 o'clock instead of 9, so that they and their workers could attend at Tabernacle. So Tabernacle and its minister's influence were very strong and very central to the development of the town of Whitland, and indeed the wider community. And it was a tough time for the community in general in the 19th century. The southwest of Wales, the 3 counties, Ceredigion, Pembrokeshire and Carmarthenshire, was a community in crisis in the 19th century. Low wages, high taxes, the church tithe, forced out of nonconformists, and dreadful housing. No wonder the toll gates, erected at Ewy Wen and Maesgwyn Llanboidy in 1839, turned out to be the straw that broke the camel's back. Merched Beca smashed the gates in protest. We have no voice, was a complaint from the tenant farmers and their workers, and they turned to their ministers for guidance and leadership, and they were not disappointed, especially the members of this chapel. Although they were not to know it at the time, the membership meeting in Sgwr in 1855 did a huge good turn to the community of West Wales when they appointed William Thomas as their minister. He not only developed into a first-class minister, but he also turned out to be a radical politician determined to improve the lot of the ordinary people. In 1884, William Thomas formed the Whitland Liberal Society, and the leader of Tabernacle became the voice of the oppressed farmers and labourers. And William Thomas called for free primary education, tenants' rights, local control over local taxes, abolish the unfair tithe tax, better housing, and disestablishment of the Church of England in Wales. The Tabernacle membership backed him all the way. Well, almost. The land question was a real hot potato in 19th century Wales, and a movement which advocated the land for the people was making great strides in educating people as to what was possible. It was led by the Reverend Dr. Pan Jones from Flint. He was invited to speak on the matter at Tabernacle by William Thomas, no doubt, in 1886. But the meeting eventually took place in the council school. And according to a newspaper report, the Lord Deacons of Tabernacle refused the meeting to be held in the chapel. But the unfairness of the tithe tax, money collected by the Church of England from the farming community, which was 80% chapel going, resulted in farmers responding positively to William Thomas's call for them to refuse payment of tithe. The bailiffs, auctioneers and police were sent to the farms to enforce sale of animals or hay ricks to the the tithe owed. William Thomas attended the sales and helped the police to keep order. Sometimes the bailiffs gave up and withdrew. Other times, neighbouring farmers bought animals which therefore never left the farm. By 1888, newspaper reports claimed that thanks to the leadership of Tabernacle's minister, Whitland had become famous as the tithe battlefield in West Wales. Well, you know, I never heard anything about that in school, and I think it should have been taught. It's a very important aspect of local history. That Whitland was the centre of the tithe up in South Wales. There's a book written about the North Wales where the centre was in Denbighshire, but nothing whatsoever about the part played by Whitland. Eventually in 1891, the government passed a law making the landlord rather than the tenant responsible for payment of tithe, but it would be another 29 years before the tithe tax was abolished. Now I'd like to highlight a few points about this chapel. In 1896, the members of Tabernacle presented a testimonial to William Thomas in recognition of his 40-year service. It took the form of a letter extolling his virtues, a kind of love letter, praising him to the rafters. It now hangs in the vestry and is well worth a look. 1910 then was the year that an organ was installed. Here it is, isn't it? The organ was installed. But not with unanimous support. A few deacons were quite happy to carry on with the precentor and his tuning fork leading the singing. It's worth noting that air had to be blown into this organ before the organist could make music. And for this purpose, there's a door on the other side there, leading where's the door here? The door on the side of the organ, and a small room where the organ blower sat and pumped away. When not required to blow, the blower came out of the organ and sat a few feet away, ready to re-enter the machine for the next hymn. And all can be seen today, apart from the blower, of course. It was as late as 1921 before a complete set of communion glasses was introduced. Prior to that, 6 deacons, each with a bottle of wine and a glass, circulated around the congregation sharing out the wine. Love thy neighbour has been a hallmark of the Tabernacle membership and its ministers. William Thomas, well, we've covered him already. The next minister was William Higgs, and he was here for 42 years. Thomas was here for 53 years. William Higgs insisted on doing his bit in the First World War, and he spent 4 months with the YMCA in France, looking after soldiers resting between stints in the front line. The third minister was Hugh Francis, and he was here for 29 years. The Reverend Francis was the Good Shepherd, who specialised in looking after his flock in chapel, in their homes and in hospitals. In the streets of Whitland he could be seen stepping over garden hedges and entering unannounced, often through back doors, to check on his members and coax them to attend chapel next Sunday. "Who gave you permission to be on this board?" shouted an authoritative matron in Glangwili. "The one that I answer to," was Hugh Francis' confident reply. Now, from the 1980s onwards, the developed world began to have a greater awareness of the needs of the people of the third world in terms of their suffering as a result of natural and man-made disasters. Tabernacle, under the leadership of the Reverend Tom Davis, and he was here for 12 years, played its part with distinction in contributing money to the various appeals made on behalf of the sufferers. And the list of places that benefited is very long indeed. Some of them included Ethiopia, Central America, Guyana, Somalia, Madagascar, Samoa, Soweto, Romania, Sudan and Bangladesh, and more. And today, under the leadership of Reverend Guto Llewellyn, delivering on Love Thy Neighbour has never been stronger in Tabernacle, with regular counselling meetings available to anyone and meetings with people of other faiths being promoted in order to gain a better understanding of other people's creeds. Well, that's all I've got to tell you. I hope you've found some of it interesting at least. Nothing out of here.
Lots of interesting bits.
Very good, right?
Thank you very much, Denny. I would again like to extend my thanks to both Guto and Denny, as well as those members of Tabernacle family who have made today possible. I would like to present Guto with some of the photos of Tabernacle through the ages, which were given to me by Sean Pugh, following the passing of her father, a very loved, adorable gentleman, and spent many years keeping Whitland history alive. Gerwin Williams is a massive loss to our community. I will be posting the video footage on the Facebook page for those that have been unable to attend or watch today. We are now invited to tea and cake in the vestry, which is provided generously by Tabernacle. Raffle tickets are also being sold, and the prize is a copy of Denley's book. But if you're not lucky enough to win the raffle, the book is available at £15. So I think you've got some stock there, Guto? Yeah. There is also a register of attendance today if you would like to complete it, and if people wish, a photo opportunity. Thank you one and all for joining us today. Thank you.
Very good.
Please come everyone to our tea, okay? I'll be posting these Denny to overseas to somewhere. Oh, please come and join us.
Come to tea now.
The history.
This one. And we can go back. So, yeah, we were children, gone.
Bentley. Michael Thomas.
Do you know why you came in?
I didn't talk to you.
Oh, they were. As soon as I talked, they already know me. Aye, how are you?
Yeah, very good.
Very good. Aye. I was looking at the pace, but then I didn't have a
Can I be helping you? I don't help.
Oh, this is it. Marvellous. Are you going to have a cup of tea?
Yes.
Good. We'll see you in there now. Yeah. Later. Oh, that is good.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I called in earlier and they're fine, yeah.
What is it?
93
Marvellous. Fantastic. Mum is quite so good.
Yeah, she's all right. She's not massively moved by it.
That's what it is.
Yeah, she gets it. But, yeah, they're both very good mentally, you know.
Well, if you got that, you got a chance of it. Fantastic.
Are you Deb's Rutter?
Yes.
Oh, mine is Mike Thomas.
Hello.
He's doing wonderful
Hello.
work.
Let me just see whether